Welcome back. Okay, quick, top story of the day. If you're a Republican, you're saying the new economic numbers. GDP grew at 4.1%, baby. No one cares about Russia, never mind the president's bromance with Vladimir Putin, and his former attorneys claim that Trump knew all about the Trump Tower meeting with the Russians before it happened. Or what about paying cash versus a check to pay off a Playboy playmate? Joining us for more are Rita Ferrandino, the former Sarasota Democratic Party chair, Jack Brill, the vice chair of the Sarasota Republican Party, and Zach Anderson, the political editor of the Herald Tribune. Welcome to you all.
Thank you.
Today, the news that the economy grew by 4.1%. This is, Rita, is the essential Republican case that no one cares about Russia when you have the economy performing the way it is now.
Well, the real issue is that because of the tariffs that have been imposed, we've seen countries starting to stockpile. And there's no surprise to anybody that there's this big jump this month. The question really is, because everybody sort of swooped in to buy prior to the tariffs taking hold, that this inflationary jump happened, what's going to happen after? And there's not any really good reason or any economic signs to think that this is anything that's more than a blip.
Jack?
It was a great day in the economy here in the United States. The trade deficit went down, something like $52 billion. We're now on an annual GDP growth of 3%, which will equate to another approximately 1 million jobs. If you think about it, since the Trump administration, we've created 4 million jobs in this country. We're on a great roll. You need to keep it going.
Zach, this is, as I said, this is the essential Republican argument that unless you are a Democrat and many independents, if you're a Republican, even if you don't like the president's other behaviors, you look at this, and this is why people voted for him in the first place.
Yeah, and there's no doubt this is good news for Republicans. You want the economy rolling when you're going into an election like this. And it used to be political gospel that, the economy was the overarching influence on any election cycle. I think it was James Carville who famously said, "It's the economy, stupid." But I don't know. These days it's so much about personality, and Trump is such a overarching figure. I don't know that, a bunch of people who are upset with the president are going to all of a sudden say that, I'm doing okay financially, that cancels that out. And you look at his approval rating. There was some polls that came out this week in the Midwest where he was in the 30s in some key states in the Midwest. And there was a poll this week in Florida that had him around 41% with 47% disapproval. So obviously some people are overlooking the good economy, and they're looking at other things about the president's record.
Real quick, folks, the House 72 did show that Republican women are willing to cross over. Jack?
That was a special election. Things are going to change for the November election. But I think we need to really go back and say, we're actually having a good year.
Rita?
Well, I don't think it is just all going to go back in November. I think people are fired up. And I think one of the issues that you haven't discussed is that the middle class have not seen any kind of economic boom at all through any of this with Donald Trump. Okay. The numbers are flat, aren't they?
Yes, or close to it, but we'll pick that up. Our conversation on the week in Washington continues. Welcome back. We are talking about the week in Washington, and joining us for more are Rita Ferrandino, the former Sarasota Democratic chair, Jack Brill, the vice chair of the Sarasota Republican Party, and Zach Anderson, the political editor of the Herald Tribune. Folks, it's been an interesting week for the president. And I can't.
More interesting than last week or the week before?
Well, in a different way, because he always talks about hiring the best people, and now we have his longtime attorney Michael Cohen somehow releasing an audio tape showing their conversation about paying off a Playboy playmate, Jack, that the president has insisted up until now he had no relationship with.
I'm going to go back to the only thing that really matters to me.
Is the economy.
No, well, that's true. But what happened to client attorney confidentiality? And that's something that obviously...
Hold on 1 second. Factually, the president, the president declined client privilege for this. They allowed that to come out. They waived it.
I have nothing to offer in that respect then, because I got to tell you, I don't care if it was a traffic ticket. if I've hired legal counsel, that's going to stay confidential between us forever.
Let's get to the good stuff, which is what the heck is he doing?
Okay, well, let's put up the tweet from the president in response when he said, "What kind of lawyer would tape a client so sad? This is the first, never heard of it before. Was the tape so abruptly terminated while I was presumably saying positive things? I hear that the other clients and many reporters are taped. Can this be so? Too bad." Now, that is one thing, but now comes news that Cohen is offering the special counsel information that the president was made aware of that Trump Tower meeting with the Russians before it took place. And Rita, I mean, what's your reaction to that?
Well, of course Trump knew about it. Trump is a megalomaniac. He is on every detail. He never would have not known anything, and he has this huge long track record of lying. So of course, this isn't new news to me. It's just come out.
So did he release client-attorney confidentiality on that too, or was that illegally done by Michael Cohen?
Zach, you know, once again, when you look at people here on the Suncoast, do they care about these things? That it's not just dribble, you know, every few days. I mean, these are pretty big things that have come out.
Well, I think the president has done a pretty good job of convincing his supporters not to pay attention to a lot of this. That's the reason that you see him constantly tweeting, constantly out there trying to discredit these reports, which have turned out to be accurate. I think that, you know, you don't really see like a massive drop in the polls or massive drop in support for the president. I think a lot of his supporters are really tuning this out to some degree, and it'll really depend on the final report from the special counsel's investigation.
Do you think that the debacle in Helsinki had a bigger impact short term in terms of the president's approval?
I think it did. I think you could see it in the polls. He did dip a little bit after that. You know, I think that there were Republicans who had been hesitant to criticize the president, who is extremely popular with Republicans. For some of them, that was a bridge too far to stand next to the Russian president, who you know, has been an adversary for this country and who obviously you know, had done some things to hack the election.
Okay, our conversation on the week in Washington will continue after a quick break. Welcome back. We are talking about the week in Washington, and joining us for more are Rita Ferrandino, the former Sarasota Democratic Party chair, Jack Brill, the vice chair of the Sarasota Republican Party, and Zach Anderson, political editor of the Herald Tribune. We've talked about the Russia investigation a little bit. There's also been a story that came out saying that 19 months into his presidency, there is no coherent Trump administration strategy to combat foreign election interference and no single person or agency in charge of it.
And why aren't we up in arms and protesting? That is just insane. It is crazy to me that we have not got anything out of the federal government or the state government to seriously look at protecting our elections. It's the cornerstone of democracy here in the U.S.
We did our supervisor elections. They all just got some money that came. It was a federal grant that came down through the states for election security, and that's being implemented right now.
But why isn't it being done on the federal level? In a way, this article goes on to say, after the terrorists had struck on 9/11, the U.S. government passed laws, boosted funding, and reorganized itself with the goal of making such an attack could never happen again. Well, we obviously have not done that on a national scale.
But maybe we are. Maybe the NSA, maybe the CIA, maybe they're doing it. That's their job. They're going to tell us about it. And I got to tell you, very interesting. I was at a CEO roundtable of hospital executives in South Carolina this week, and it shows how much everybody has had to up the security game. The average hospital in South Carolina, because that's where I was, they get tapped into their, you know, their security defense systems 5 to 6 times a day and up to 5 to 6 times an hour. And when they track them back, 90% of them are coming from Russia. And so obviously there are security systems in place. People are constantly dealing with it on a daily basis. We have obviously built, and our companies have built great defense systems to make sure it doesn't happen.
The stakes could not be higher. According to the Cook report, with 102 days to go before the election, Democrats remain substantial favorites for House control. A big reason Republicans are defending 42 open seats or vacant seats, a record since 1930. This midterm election, Zach, is going to be fascinating. We have a very competitive race right here And that's why people are continuing to be concerned about whether or not the Russians are going to, foul up the machines again, so to speak.
I think we all should be concerned about cybersecurity. I mean, we all see it, with our bank cards that are, that information is stolen at times, and people run up reports on your credit card. I think Trump has been very defensive. He views, any admission that there was hacking as somehow delegitimizing his presidency, and that might have played into, not really making a big public push to talk about election security. There is election security efforts going on. There have been grants that have been going down to some of the supervisors. There have been efforts on a local scale to do some of this, but it is a very big concern, and it's interesting that nobody is really talking about it in a big way at the federal level.
All right, let's take a pivot and talk about the governor's race and the elections and some of the candidate forums that are coming up. New polling coming out shows that Ron DeSantis is now overtaken Adam Putnam for the Republican gubernatorial election or nomination. Adam Putnam has been running for governor for about 20 years now. President Trump basically says he is supporting DeSantis. He's coming to Tampa on Tuesday. I'm sure this shocks folks like you.
Well, he hasn't been running for 20 years, but he's been running for the last couple. But one of the things, if you want to know how this is going to fare out, Sarasota's the place to be tomorrow. Tomorrow, Adam Putnam and Ron DeSantis will be at Robarts Arena at our candidate rally, and it'll be the first time they've been together since the debate up in Orlando, which was on national Fox News. And it'll be very interesting to see how our voters react to both primary candidates. And we look forward to it for this event. Can
Adam Putnam overcome a presidential visit less than a month before the election?
I think you're seeing the initial reaction to the president's support of Congressman DeSantis, but you've got to look at the entire voting bloc, and we'll see what happens.
Rita, on the Democratic side, Gwen Graham has basically built out a larger lead in the Democratic field. This after billionaire Jeff Green comes in there and seems to have blown Philip Levine, the former Miami Beach mayor, a little bit out of the water.
So I think we're all really on edge waiting to see what's going to happen. We've got Gwen Graham supporters, Gillum supporters, Philip Levine supporters, and then, Jeff Green is on TV. What was it, a $9.6 million ad buy this week? So it's just all open. I do want to come back, though, to the security. I think it's completely insufficient and naive to think that small grants coming to the local level to expect the supervisor of elections office here to be fighting cybersecurity on their own with a small amount of money that's granted to them is not sufficient in any way. I think we need a much broader strategy. I just had to bring that back because I just don't believe you can fight cybersecurity on a local level when you've got this kind of potential attacks happening. Your hospitals have mega resources to be fighting.
Well, these are small. It's small and large. It was just fascinating to see that this was still going on. But I also, the grants you're talking about, the supervisor elections here is looking, they're getting, that's one piece. It's one more piece to add the layer to add security.
I think that's a good spin.
Jack, has Russia paid a price for interfering in our election?
Well, they've got a terrible economy over there. We've got, if you look at, they're a third world economy at this point, so.
Have they paid a price for meddling with our?
I guess we're going to find out when the Mueller investigation is done to see how far they actually.
Well, it's not up to Bob Mueller to sanction Russia over interfering in our election.
We've got so many sanctions on Russia already. How many more can you put on, from a worldwide economy?
Zach, you cover the elections around here. Are people concerned about whether or not these elections will be fair and square?
I haven't heard a lot of that concern. I don't. The supervisor of elections office in Florida are all individually run by individual counties. I don't know if people just sort of understand that it's hard to hack all of those, or maybe it's just not filtered down. But I haven't heard a lot of people expressing broad concern that all of a sudden our voting is going to be hacked.
But what people have been saying and what the reports have been is that there's no allegation that the Russians changed votes in the ballot box in 2016, but they have shown an ability to hack into state voter databases, and if you mess around with who's registered and who's not, that's where potentially the big trouble
They
is.
haven't been successful yet, and as we continue to build up our cyber defenses, they will not be successful.
You get the last word.
And we here have a terrible record of our elections. In 2006, we were the center of the country's eye because of our inability to.
But boy, have we come a long ways from them from a technology and what our supervisor elections have done. So we've
Cybersecurity needs to be fought at a very high level.
Okay, we have to end it there. We want to thank all our guests for being here tonight. Rita Ferrandino, the former Sarasota Democratic Party chair, Jack Brill, the vice chair of the Sarasota Republican Party, and Zach Anderson, the political editor of the Herald Tribune.